So I was playing War Thunder one day, introducing a friend to the game. They liked arcade well enough, and they wanted to see everything that the game had to offer, so we switched to realistic. He began to rage because of course he didn't really know the maps, and people were easily picking him off. But I quickly noticed that I was enjoying it a lot. My map knowledge from arcade transferred very well to this mode, and I was having one heck of a time. In the past, I had tried realistic tanks for about 100 games before I found some flaws which really prevented me from playing it and enjoying it any further. So in this War Thunder vlog, I will cover the reasons why I really enjoyed this game mode and the reasons why I don't really find it that fun either. Okay, so let's start with the good stuff. First of all, the lack of markers is a good thing. In this recording, I actually left the markers on so I would know who I missed out when I was looking around without them. The lack of markers does make it much easier to set up a good ambush and to snipe, but as I will discuss later, this also has some serious drawbacks. Personally, I would go for a battlefield compromise, where you have an easy to reach, well explained spotting key, which is Q in Battlefield, and this key would highlight the enemy for a few moments so that other people know who you are firing at. I know that War Thunder has something like this, but nearly no one uses it as it's not very well explained like it is in the Battlefield series. Second, the lack of a drop indicator. This is actually the one part about arcade I do not like. Aiming is too trivial, and having to compensate the drop yourself gives the game another layer of skill. Sniping becomes satisfying. Now, if these two things were all that was different between the modes, I would have long switched over to realistic. Unfortunately, the game devs really did not implement this game mode very well, and there are many problems present. In this recording, you see very low battle rating gameplay, where people simply have not yet learned to exploit some of the mechanics that I will discuss further. The first major issue I have with realistic is people who use camouflage bushes on their tanks. These people typically do not use it to camouflage themselves in bushes. It doesn't work at long range. They usually use it to disguise their weak spots and make it much more difficult to identify the tank they are driving. This is blatant pay to win. It's an obvious advantage and it's mostly available to paying customers. This is a big fail. The second problem really shows up in higher battle rating games. People just often do not play the points. This has a lot to do with how slow the points are to capture, but it also comes back to the lack of indicators. Spawn camping is just way too easy to accomplish in realistic, and it is not infrequent to instantly die to a spawn camper on your second spawn. I have done this to other people too, and it is unfortunately exceptionally trivial on some maps where all you really have to do is drive along the edge of the map until you are at the enemy spawn. Some spawns are so absurd that they even allow you to sit behind the enemies as they spawn and just execute them the moment their invulnerability wears off. Combine this with how slow tanks are to turn and notice you in realistic, and you basically have a nearly foolproof way to win the game without ever even capturing any points. This unfortunately is not even limited to spawn camping. The community has documented quite a few spots on maps such as Vietnam and Ash River, where you can overwatch either the whole map or traffic heavy points, and you can easily snipe the enemy without much of a consequence. Meanwhile, the enemy often has to expose their whole hull to even see you. Not good. Air support in realistic ground is overpowered. It works the same way as in arcade Navy, where the bombs go off without a timed fuse. Timed fuses in arcade makes it so that bombers are really only useful for displacing campers. They are merely a tool. Meanwhile, in realistic ground, you are at constant risk of being killed by a random bomber, and you really often don't have any way to respond. Obviously, this is not such a problem if you have a teammate committed to being anti-air, but not everyone wants to because it's not that interesting of a position to play, and I also really just play this game as a time waster, and so I don't really always want to have someone with me. In fact, most of the time I do not. This greatly limits how much I could enjoy realistic on my own. Third, giving everyone artillery at the start. This is bad. This causes a lot of artillery spam at the beginning, especially on points, and I really do not feel that people deserve to get artillery until they have done something useful for their team. Arcade rewards you with plane spawns and artillery, which are more useful the earlier you get them. This promotes aggressive gameplay where momentum remains high. The earlier you kill someone, the more likely you will to get tools that will displace people from camping positions, where you can again kill them to get even more tools against campers. This does not happen in realistic. In realistic, meanwhile, usually the game stagnates and people just start watching lanes. Since tanks are so slow, they have difficulties changing lanes or switching cover without the serious risk of being shot. And since there is little reward for getting kills early, you often just wait for someone to drive into your crosshair. This is stagnant gameplay and I do not like it. Fourth, the battle ratings are not balanced between nations. If, for example, a nation has a really good setup at 7.7 and another nation has a really good setup at 8.3, the 8.3 nation will often get down tiered to fight the 7.7 nation, and the 7.7 nation will end up up tiered very frequently fighting the 8.3 nation. Which means that some tanks are almost always in bad matchups. Some tanks are unplayable in realistic. In arcade, not a problem. In arcade, you very frequently get up tiered, you very frequently get down tiered. Every tank practically gets its chance in the spotlight and it gets its chance to shine. Sure, there are some battle ratings in arcade where you get down tiered a lot, and of course, you tend to play in them if you're smart. But on average, you get a lot less disbalance in terms of battle rating because you can mix nations together. It's not such a big problem. In realistic, it is a very big problem. What you choose really strongly influences how well you will do in realistic, and that's a big issue. That's not good. That's bad balance. The fifth problem is a matter of taste. Realistic just lacks momentum. It's slow. It kind of meanders about. It doesn't feel like it has structure, right? In games where every second matters, it feels like you have to make a decision right now. You're playing the game actively, right? You're actively making decisions. This is what, Battlefield 3 was like, or Rainbow Six Siege, where every move matters. In realistic, unfortunately, it's so slow. You spend so much time just waiting around. I cannot enjoy it beyond, just occasionally doing something new, doing something different. Using it as a break from arcade, it makes sense. But playing it as, on its own, it does not make sense to me. This mode does not make sense to me as something to play long term. I just don't understand it. So, in conclusion, realistic round is not bad. It's good for variety, but I can't see myself playing it long term. I can't see myself enjoying it. And you're probably wondering what happened to my friends that I introduced to this game. Did they quit because this was too hard? Actually, no. They liked the gameplay of both modes quite well. They were fine with that. Until they realized how slow the grind is in this game. The grind really is exceptionally slow. You get tanks slowly, even in low tiers. If you're not, blasting the doors off and killing a lot and getting a lot of caps, the grind is slow. And when they saw that premium vehicles are $50 to $60, as much as a AAA full price game, they lost all interest. The problem is that when you introduce someone to this game and they see that, you start having to make excuses. Oh, this game is so realistic. The gameplay is good. When you start making excuses for a game for a very obvious flaw, it's fucked. All right, it's done. It's not gonna get players to play it. And that is why, if you look at the Steam statistics, you will find that the population of players playing this game on March 2014 is almost the same as March 2019. And Steam is a major way that free-to-play games get players. they rise and fall on Steam, promoting them. So when people see these prices that this game developer has decided upon, they don't buy this game. They refuse to buy. They don't buy anything in this game. They refuse to play this game. They're done with it. They enjoy it a little bit, but then they sort of do a mental analysis. Is it worth, paying $60 each time just to grind a single nation? And there's so many nations. Is it worth paying that much money for just for the privilege of grinding in this game? Not to actually buy the whole tree for like $100 or $60-$100. That might make sense, but just for the privilege of reasonable grinding speeds, I mean, people don't accept that. They just don't accept that. And the community of this game accepts that, but most people do not accept that, and that is why it doesn't grow. I'm actually quite sad about that, but that is actually why this game is not as successful as it could be. So on that somber note, I'm finished. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. I hope you liked the gameplay, and I hope you will subscribe and hit the bell to get updates on my channel. Thanks a lot for watching. See you later.